Within the community, we talk a lot about what seems to be a pretty broad spectrum of maintenance issues. Everything from the proper and rightful scheduling of PMs through to the correct way to select scope for turnaround and everything in between. But what I think we don't very much talk about, and maybe it's because it's not as easy to come up with a solution program, if we don't talk about the stuff that breaks. And this is the real stuff, in my experience, that leads to incurable maintenance backlogs. So I want to use an example, and it's kind of it is 100% from my own experiences. I've made up from hundreds and hundreds of such experiences, and it does indicate that I have a subspecialty in this world called Northern Operations. But a work order gets written one night in July, and it says quite simply that on this southeast high line in such and such an area, there is a steam condensate leak in the high line that needs to be addressed. And the next morning, the operations maintenance coordinator does go take a look at that and discovers that there is indeed a wet spot on the ground in that area. Oh, say it's 15, 20 centimeters around. So that item is going to have a very difficult time arguing for what maintenance often refers to as break-in work. Now, break-in work is for these things that come up in the night that need to be addressed, but they need to be addressed immediately. So this little order for what everybody this July evening is looking at as a pretty inconsequential steam leak in the High Line is not in anybody's high priority list. So the thing about this one is odds are good, way better than 50%, that if a fitter had have gone up to that leaking union, it turns out it was a leaking steam tracing union, and tightened each of the nuts up by a quarter turn, the leak would have stopped, and it would have stopped permanently. However, that's not what happened. And part of what drives it not being what happened is in the 40-ish% of the time when it turns out that you can't just tighten it up, and now you're going to have to get the steam tracing shut off, and you're going to have to replace a small section. That's what they don't want to have as a break-in in the schedule. So now this work goes into the to be scheduled pile. Well, again, when everybody goes out there to look at it, it's, a 15 centimeter wet spot on the ground. And does it ever rise to the point that people are going to see it pushed onto the schedule? Not in my experience. But here's what happens, and here's why this story is significant. Later in the year, this time of year, that steam leak that was so inconsequential, underneath that location now is an iceberg that probably weighs in excess of 25 or 30 tons. And if you're studious and you sit back and look at it, you'll realize that that is hanging, let's say, completely from a cable tray that has all the main instrumentation runs for the entire facility. Now, very few people know about this icicle because it's wintertime. And in the wintertime, you don't get people walking around out in the facility very much. It's mostly, go to the permit shack if you need to, go to the shops if you can. People try to stay out of it. So there's a tiny handful of operations folk that know about this iceberg. And they know that it's hanging on that cable tray. But here's what happens with that tiny handful. They've already notified through the system that they have a leak here. And so now to them, this tiny handful of people, this just becomes another example of why management doesn't care. And nobody else knows. Nobody else knows until a couple of days from now, say. And it's a cold night. Not a nice day like now. It's a cold night. Always is when this happens. It's minus 15 or colder. And that cable tray, which was never designed to carry that iceberg, it comes down. And with it comes crashing down the entire facility in the middle of winter. And the damages from the crash and the lost production from the unexpected outage total in the millions. This was a job that was most likely 10 minutes on a genie lift, a pair of wrenches, and one technician to fix. When we're talking about the problems we have in our facility maintenance system, I'm going to put forward that we need to be honest enough to include this type of what I think of as repair shop issue. Nobody wants to let their maintenance department be a repair shop. Everybody wants you to stay on schedule and stay on those PMs. So that little steam leak in July never gets addressed until it becomes a total plant outage in January. Peace out.